Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I'm doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You'll never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe and returned to the table, he said, "Do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them."
Hello, my name is Phillips. I'm a Methodist minister working at Durham University, at Premier Media, and also at Spurgeon's College. My research is focused around digital theology and the hybrid church. Although originally I'm a New Testament teacher at Cliff College and other places, and focusing on John's Gospel. This reading begins what many commentators call the Book of Glory, the second part of John's Gospel, which focuses upon the Easter narrative, this Last Supper, the arrest of Jesus, his trial, crucifixion, and resurrection. This is what John means when he says in the opening verse, he loved them to perfection. I think that phrase is a reference to the whole section of the Gospel, not just to what follows in this passage, the very famous story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. In this passage, Jesus reverses the usual honour structure of a rabbinic school. Usually, students would show honour to their rabbi, caring for his needs, preparing for food, like popping off into Sukkah to get the shopping while Jesus stays at the well and meets the Samaritan woman, washing his hands and feet before a meal, and so on. Instead, and making his actions stand out by breaking into the mealtime itself, Jesus makes a point of washing his disciples' feet. Note that John points out the power that Jesus holds, power given by God, power predicated on his source from God and his return to God. This messianic Jesus strips and stoops down to wash his disciples' feet. One by one around the circle, the all-powerful Jesus stoops before his disciples, picks up their dirty feet, and washes them. Peter's clearly not up for such intimacy. He tells Jesus off. And when Jesus persists, Peter changes direction and tells him to give him a whole bath instead. Perhaps he prefers adult baptism to foot washing. Of course, Jesus points out that he's missed the point, or to use the modern phrase perhaps, he's jumped the shark. This is about building community relations, about team dynamics rather than salvation. We aren't saved by washing each other's feet. We're saved by Jesus dying on the cross, his arms outstretched in an embrace of the world. But here, Jesus shows his disciples of an equal church which he wants to develop. A church not based on power dynamics, but a community of equals, sharing intimacy with one another. A church happy to wash and be washed. A church which does not cling on to power dynamics, but instead gives up power to connect with each other. Something Paul himself saw in that passage in Philippians, where Jesus doesn't cling to power, but stoops down to be a servant, even to death upon the cross. Jesus gives up power and acknowledges himself as a servant in order to build unity with the rest of his team. We're called to do likewise, to form a church which is based on intimate service, intimate connection with one another, being servants one to each other. And by following Christ's example, we too will be blessed.